Well, it's a bitch being rich. The federal government set to hike their taxes, and now at least 4 big states are planning to add to their misery. In New Jersey, they're proposing a surtax on the top 5%, amounting to, well, about 5%. New York and California, Connecticut, all considering similar measures. My next guest says it's about time. We should move more of the tax burden back to the wealthy. John Green is the director of Connecticut Working Families. But, John, you could drive those very folks right out of your state, right?
Well, Neil, first of all, thanks for having me on the show. You know, we're looking at significant budget deficits at the state level here in Connecticut and elsewhere. And unfortunately, at the state level, we don't have the luxury of deficit spending. We have to balance our budget. And what we're hoping to avoid is, you know, what economist Paul Krugman has termed the, 50 Herbert Hoover syndrome. So given the options of deep cuts in services and significant layoffs, as opposed to raising taxes on the wealthy, raising those taxes on high-wage earners, people making $500,000 or $1 million or more, is clearly the most fair and the least harmful way
how do you know? I mean, a lot of people would look at a government against laying off government workers as not necessarily fairly considering all options. The only reason why I mention is the upper income are already going to see their federal tax rate zoom up to about 40%. Take their deductions away, you're up to around 43%. Do what they're considering in Connecticut, you're zooming in on close to 50%. I mean, where does it go? I mean, some of these guys are actually fairly smart. They might just go elsewhere, right?
Well, actually, Connecticut is an example of a state that is already a low tax haven for high-income earners. All of the surrounding states
No, you could be losing that fast. You're quite right. No, you're quite right. In the tri-state, so-called New York, New Jersey, Connecticut area, they're all competing with each other to hike the taxes. But you're getting to a point where there are fewer of them. You know what I mean? I'm not apologizing to the rich. I'm just saying that eventually this strategy gets old, right? Times get tough. Stick it to the rich.
That's a theory.
Well, it's not a theory. The reality is,
by the facts.
No. I live in New Jersey, right? We have 3 people. Rich people left in New Jersey. That's it. Just 3.
And actually, there's a study by Princeton University that shows that when
that's what happens
the state
when you
raised
do
the
this.
income tax on those families.
Listen to what I'm saying here, and I'm going to let you talk.
Sure.
This is taxable income in New Jersey, and the way they're planning it now with these surtaxes and everything else, we're going to be zooming up to around 52%. And that's not counting some of the other stuff they're considering. In New York, the same sort of shenanigans brings you up close to 60%. I actually talked to, I'm not kidding you, to some guy who said, count your lucky stars, Neil, because the top rate used to be around 90%. So I guess his argument was, we have another 30, 40% to go. That's stupid, John. That's stupid, and you know that's stupid.
Well, that's not on the table. I mean, that's not on the table.
90% isn't on the table. But another 10% is.
But well, it's less than 10%. We're talking about an increase of going from 5% to 6 or 7% or 8%
but
at the very highest end.
I mean,
people earning over $1 million.
John, you got to see what's happening. No, please, because you got to see what's going on. A little bit at a time. They had the tax on millionaires in New Jersey. It turns out was for people who earn far less than $1 million. And now a few years later, saying, we need more money. Let's go back to those millionaires who aren't millionaires and tax them again. And then another assemblyman said in the same state, you know what? We ought to just keep this going, a percent at a time, year after year, because, the millionaires will always be millionaires, even though they're not millionaires, and we can keep taxing them, with the belief being that they're always our gravy train. But the reality is, the more you tax them, the more your respective states' budgets suck. So it's not as if you're making things better. It's not as if, while at Presto, you've solved all your budgetary problems. You're still deep in the hole, right?
Well, in New Jersey, when they increased the income tax on families making over $200,000 a year in 2004, people said exactly what you're saying. The reality is now there are more families earning over $200,000 and paying taxes on that income in New Jersey than there were then. I mean, the exact opposite of the trend.
Well, that's not true. That's not true, because right now, the improvement, you're shifting the argument. You're shifting the argument. I said the situation for the state has gotten worse, right? The rich, you're right, are accounting for a far greater share of the tax burden in New Jersey.
And there's more of them
but
in
we're
the state.
running an $8 trillion deficit in New Jersey. My point is that if you said this manna from heaven, sucking off the rich was going to do it, it doesn't. And that applies nationally. Well, a lot of people think, well, you just stick it to the rich, then we can fund a lot of what the president wants to do, fund, I guess, what you want to do in Connecticut. You know what? I've actually crunched the numbers on this. Do you know if you were to take all of the upper income's money, 100% of it. Just give them the check to respect our government. It still wouldn't be enough to pay for these programs. The reason why I tell people in other income strata to look at this is it starts with the rich. And in order to pay for this government that you want, John, you have to go way below the rich, right?
Well, right now we're all paying. I mean, we all paid a lot of money so that, you know,
well,
folks
so
like
are the
John
rich.
Boehner
I mean, they're not getting off easy. They're paying too. The rich are paying too. You're saying pay up more because you're rich and we hate you, right?
No, what we're saying is that if of all the options available, what's the least harmful option when we're trying to dig out of an economic recession?
John, the least harmful option,
marginal increases of taxes on wealthy people.
The least harmful option for all your taxpayers is less government, less spending. The least harmful option is to look at how you waste money.
That's not what most economists say. When we're trying to dig out of a recession, you know, cutting jobs, cutting employment, cutting government spending, and cutting income for people at the bottom is only going to deepen and lengthen the recession.
Are you quoting the same economists who missed this financial freefall? I'll leave that aside. I think that would you pay more for lousy service? Would you pay more for a car if you knew it was a lemon? Only governments, whether state, local, or federal, can demand more for screwed up service and can demand that you pay more for inefficiency. Government's the only one who can get away with that.
Well, actually, right now, you know, if you look at our healthcare system, American residents pay far more per capita for our healthcare system, and we're the ones that are stuck with a lemon.
Well, actually, give that time. You could suck that off the rich, too. You could suck that off the rich, too. You know, it's not too far to 100%. Just give it time. I'm sure we can. But
well,
John,
right now we're looking at 7 or 8% on the highest income families.
40%. All right, John, very good having you. I'm just counting my money as I'm talking.